think really, really helps when you're in communication with someone, especially if it gets a little contentious, is let them get everything out. You want to number these, number them, write
Rest.
them down, whatever. When you are communicating with someone, especially if it's contentious, let them get everything out. If you don't have the time to let them get everything out, wait and continue the conversation when you can. And this is only for close friends and family, all right? Close friends or family, contentious conversation or potentially contentious, let them get everything out. The only time you may want to interrupt them is to make sure you're understanding. So, one, yo, thanks for locking in and welcome to the Jyim Life podcast. You are rocking out with Jyim holistic health coach, personal trainer, strength and conditioning coach, and co-founder of the Jyim DTLA. Today, we are going to be talking about the lost art of listening. I'm going to break that down into two parts. External listening and internal listening. I find both to be very important. External listening is when you're having those conversations with other people. Internal listening is when you're having those conversations with yourself. Today is my recovery day. So I'll show you the stretches that I'll be going through today as we're having our conversation. We're gonna go for a hip flexor stretch where we tuck the pelvis. You feel that stretch in your hips. Then we drive back to get the adductors and the hamstrings. We'll get that on the left side and get that on the right side where we tuck, then drive back. Then after that, we're gonna be on our back. We're gonna go through figure fours. Each one, we're gonna go for about 10 reps. If you could do a little bit more, a little bit less, doesn't matter. The whole point today is just making sure we're getting a good stretch in today. After you do the figure four stretch, then we're gonna go child's pose into plank, where we drive butt back. Once you feel that stretch, come up into a plank. Same thing, go for about 10 reps. Drive back and then drive forward. Okay, so I'm gonna take that back from the top where I go for the hip flexor stretch into the adductor slash hamstring stretch. Listening. It's funny, there's certain subjects that I think when I have the idea or the concept is brought forth to me to cover, I have like a trillion different directions that I want to go. And when it comes to listening, that is something that I hold very important and very true to myself, right? Like, cause I take pride in it and I put a lot of intention and purpose into it. And even with that effort, I still miss, right? How many of us, gotta be super honest here, how many of us are guilty of saying things like, I hear you, but you're not hearing me. You know when you're in the middle of that conflict. I hear you, but you're not hearing me. I hear you, but you're not hearing me. I want to start. We're gonna start with external listening. We have to understand or grasp the concept that we are not qualified to tell somebody that we're hearing them. We're not qualified to tell somebody that we're hearing them. It is not possible. And I'm gonna go a little bit deeper. You know how many times I've been having conversations with close friends, family, doesn't matter, right? And the conversation isn't even contentious, there's no conflict involved, but I'll say something in casual conversation, and then as they start answering what they thought I said, I'm like, oh, that's not even close to what I said, right? So now I have to reframe it, which we have to remember that listening also is the person who's doing the communication has to do a good job of expressing themselves in a way that the other person understands as well. But today we're focused on the listening part. So there's times where I have to kind of reframe what I'm saying because I'm like, oh, okay, they didn't fully hear what I was saying, or they misinterpreted, or they heard it through their programming. That's a big part. We'll get into that in a minute. We'll go back to the original quote, so infamous and prevalent. I hear you, but you're not hearing me. I hear you, but you're not hearing me. The only way we can establish whether or not we heard someone is if they confirm it. The only way we can establish whether or not we heard someone is if they confirm it. So if you're in the middle of a conversation and somebody says something and you feel like you understand, just confirm it. Hey, are you saying, and paraphrase it, right? So you don't want to repeat exactly what they said back, but kind of say it in your words and see if they can confirm that you heard them. That's a big part of making sure that you've actually heard someone when they've communicated something. Now, I think true listening takes a lot of time and effort, and energy. So we're not going to be able to exhibit that level of hearing or listening every time we have a conversation, but we can be aware of it. A really interesting thing happened this morning before I came here to record is I'm having a text message conversation with my business partner, college roommate, good friend, and super simple, nothing contentious about the conversation, but we're communicating back and forth through message, and I thought I understood him. And I said, oh yeah, got it, good. And he must have been able to tell that I did it. So he calls me. He's like, oh, hey, I mean this way to go, and we're talking about Instagram and social media, things like that. He's like, oh no, I didn't mean to share it this way. And I was like, oh no, I was listening through what I thought you were saying versus what you were actually saying. And it just shows how easily we can misunderstand people in day-to-day conversation. Now, why is external listening so important? When we're talking about wellness, it transcends way beyond just being inside the gym. If your stress levels are high, if you have high anxiety, you're in constant conflict with the people around you, you are not going to be able to truly benefit from your workouts and your nutrition programming. Reason being, when you're in a stress state and cortisol levels are up and your sympathetic nervous system is activated, you are not going to be able to digest food as efficiently. You're not going to be able to burn fat, burn calories as efficiently. Energy is going to drop. All these things are going to be chain reactions to you being in conflict, especially if it's constant, right? And I think one of the major culprits of being in constant conflict is the inability to listen, truly listen. There has been numerous times, I'll even get into very specific cases where I've had conversations with friends and I may say something, and we're gonna get into the programming now. I may say something that is in alignment with how I think, how I feel, my experiences, which is our programming. Let me define programming, then we'll get into that. Programming is essentially what we were taught, our environmental influences. So we were a blank slate when we were born, to some degree, right? Nature versus nurture. We were a blank slate when we were born to some degree, but then depending on our parents, we were introduced religion, ways of life, ways of eating, ways of communicating, morality, values, character, all these things are introduced to us at a young age, even unintended programming. So we're watching maybe our mother and our father or our older brothers, aunts, uncles communicate. And as we're seeing this, we're being programmed. Now, what we have to remember is while we're being programmed, there's somebody on the other side of the country or the other side of the world that's being programmed in a completely different way. We have to remember that neither programming is correct. I was born in Worcester, Massachusetts. My mother is from Trinidad and Tobago. My father is from Ghana, West Africa. There are so many cultural influences and programming that occurred as I grew up that's going to be completely different than somebody who grew up in, let's say, Saudi Arabia, or somebody who grew up in Japan, or somebody who grew up in Russia, right? There's so many different ways of being programmed when it comes to religion, all these different ways. So we have to remember, I could be saying something that sounds like you're hearing me, but you're still going to hear it through your programming. Let's get into something a little more specific. My family, and get a little personal, my family, not personal like deep, personal like just personal story. My mother specifically and her brothers are from Trinidad and Tobago, which means they laugh and joke all the time. Or like, I remember growing up, hearing my uncles come over, my mom there from like 6, 7 in the morning, joke, everything joke. And you're laughing, hey, what is it, boy? And you're laughing, right? So there's a lot of times I find humor in things that other people may not find humor in, even with myself. So I could say to somebody, oh, I was a little bit bothered, right? Now, when I say I'm bothered, for one of my friends, they may think, okay, when I'm bothered with someone, like truly annoyed, that means I don't want to talk to them. That means I'm upset with them. That means I'm considering cutting them off. For me, being bothered is like, oh, it's kind of funny how we see things differently. And it kind of bothers me that we're not on the same page at this moment. But I haven't, attached any additional behaviors or reactions to that, right? So now I could sit there and talk to my friend who maybe has grown up in a different part of the country and we connected through high school or college, whatever. And I say to them, oh, you know what? I was talking to somebody and they bothered me. And they may hear, oh, you're considering cutting them off. You're annoyed with them. You don't want to deal with them anymore. They're attaching their programming to what I just said. And the amount of times that happens is absolutely countless, where we're saying something that's in alignment with how we were brought up in our culture and our programming, and then somebody hears that through their program. The only way to combat that or kind of diffuse that is to make sure you get off of your programming and get into the next person's programming. That's the only way that's going to happen. I have lost count of the amount of times where I've said certain, let me even sidetrack a little more. What I think we do with external listening and programming is there's certain sentences, certain phrases, certain words that trigger talking points. Certain sentences, certain phrases, certain words that trigger talking points. So I could be talking to one of my women friends and I could say something like, oh, I went out with this girl last week. How did it go? It was cool. I'm not sure when I'm gonna message her back. Or I could say, maybe I'm a little hesitant, whatever it could be. And they may hear something like, oh, that means you don't like her. And I'm not saying this is all the time, but you can say, oh, that means you don't like her. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I just take my time with things. So no matter how excited I may be about somebody, it's always very innately, and in addition to that, kind of how I was brought up to always simultaneously, as my feelings come, my thoughts come at the same time. Like they just work together. So it's never to negate the feelings, but so that they work together to make sure that I'm not wasting my time or her time. But I could be communicating that to somebody and they could be hearing it through their programming. And now it triggers a certain set of responses. Have you ever been this, this one to me is the funnest. Have you ever been talking to someone who loves to read, loves to listen to podcasts, loves to go through all those like cool quotes and different philosophers and leaders, and you'll say one thing and they get into their speech. This is my opportunity, okay? And you could say something like, this situation made me fearful. This situation made me hesitant, or you bothered me, or you upset me. And they hear that word and they go into everything they've heard. Oh, you're this? Well, that means, and it's like, pause for a second. Those moments when that person goes into those talking points, somebody has to be the person to kind of scale back, and then you don't go into your talking points, because it usually, that's what it does. It's like when somebody starts hitting talking points, it drags you into talking points where you say, well, you need to learn to be more optimistic. Then somebody responds, well, you can't be optimistic because then that's negating reality. And it's like, well, neither of you are talking about the actual subject. Whenever I do intakes, I have new people come in all the time, and they can be saying what appears to be the same thing if I'm not paying attention. It could be man, woman, whatever, and they're struggling with weight loss, struggling with anxiety, struggling with depression, struggling with building muscle mass, chronic illnesses, whatever. And let's say I have somebody who's 5'10", male, struggling with weight loss, high blood pressure, and high sugar levels. They come in and they say, I work a lot and I don't have time to work out. And my last client, as I learned, they actually did have the time to work out, and they did not like working out because they would rather spend the time watching the game or watching football with their buddies. So now this client comes in, he's a football fan. He says the same exact thing, and they have the same exact team. Automatically, and this is what we have to be aware of, is that our brain is designed to save time and energy. So in order to save time and energy, our brain will start shortcutting what's going on. So my brain naturally wants to say, okay, football fan, male, same height, same build, wants to lose weight, same kind of job. That means stop. Anytime that happens, I ask another follow-up question. Okay, so what do you do for work? Those times when you have a plan to work out, what usually stops you from making it to the gym or doing that workout? When you have a plan to eat a certain way or follow a certain program that you put forth for yourself, why haven't you? I always make sure even when I have those triggered responses, when my brain is trying to take the shortcut and say, you don't have to listen anymore, we got this figured out. He's this, that, and that, and go. I always pause myself and ask a follow-up question. Then a follow-up question, then a follow-up question. So what that helps me to do is, as I start training and working with this person, as time goes on, I'm able to communicate to them in their language. In order to fully hear someone, to have communication that's conducive to you guys reaching some level of some agreement or just some level of understanding for each other, you have to make sure you get off your programming. So I'm going to give a couple of tools, then we're going to go into internal listening. A few tools that I think help. And remember, the whole intention or purpose of this conversation is to make sure that we're keeping our stress levels low, we're having healthy communication, and that will give us more energy to focus on other areas of our life when we can make this simple fix. So one tool that I think really, really helps when you're in communication with someone, especially if it gets a little contentious, is let them get everything out. You want to number these, number them, write them down, whatever. When you are communicating with someone, especially if it's contentious, let them get everything out. If you don't have the time to let them get everything out, wait and continue the conversation when you can. And this is only for close friends and family, all right? Close friends or family, contentious conversation or potentially contentious, let them get everything out. The only time you may want to interrupt them is to make sure you're understanding. So one practice that I utilize is somebody could be saying, and I can tell, I'm like, okay, they have a lot to get out and they're going. I'll pause. I'm like, hey, could you pause for a second? I said, so I just want to make sure that I'm following you correctly. You said X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z. Am I correct? Yes? Okay, go on. Then I'll make a mental note of it to make sure that we're on the same page. So you want to make sure that you're practicing active listening. That's the most important thing. Let them get everything out and then practice active listening while they get everything out. Okay, so we got 1, let them get everything out. 2, practice active listening. 3, make sure before you respond, that they've confirmed that you've heard them. It makes no sense to respond to something that was never even said, right? So 1, let them get everything out. 2, make sure you're practicing active listening. And 3, you want to confirm with them that you've heard what they said. I don't even want to go into the foundation, we say is 0 before you even get into let them get everything out. I remember when I got into boxing, one of the coaches there, he used to say all the time, if your cup is full, I can't put any water in it. If your cup is full, I can't put any water in it. And essentially what he's saying is, if you already have an idea of what I'm saying, if you already have what you've associated with what I'm saying and your responses and your triggers all working together, I can't really communicate to you because you've already have your conclusion. So that's like the foundation, is to make sure you've emptied out your programming, emptied out the way what you already think they're gonna say, empty all of that out, which is super hard when you're dealing with close friends or family, because you're like, oh, here they go, I know exactly what they're gonna say. And I'm gonna say this not to knock any of my close friends or family, but I have people that are insanely close to me that still to this day, when we have a conversation, they don't know where I'm going. You get what I'm saying? So it doesn't mean that because you've known somebody for X amount of years or time that you exactly know where they're gonna go, right? So back to our stretch. It's cool today, right? We stretch, no working out. I needed this. I'm going on a run later, so don't judge me. The biggest thing is emptying out the cup first. So sometimes that even means, and we know when that conversation is coming, when we have that conversation, it may not even be a conflict in the sense that you guys are at odds, but just that you feel passionate about the subject matter. You have to empty out your programming. One, let them get everything out. Two, practice active listening. Three, get that confirmation. Get that confirmation that you understand. Don't go to the whole, now that I said this, you can't go do this in the next conversation. I've taken that excuse away from you. You can't do the whole, I hear you, but you're not hearing me. You can't do that no more, because we've already covered that definition, that you're not qualified to say you've heard someone. You can only confirm with them that you've heard them. So now after you've confirmed with them, and this is the toughest part, you have to give value to what they're saying. You have to give value to what they're saying, and just assume or accept that they just may be seeing something when it comes to their feelings or their position that you're just not seeing yet. And it will take time to get there. But you will never get there if you don't give value to what they're saying. And if you don't plan on giving value to what they're saying, then they probably shouldn't be a close friend or family member, right? You can tell I got passion on that point. I lost count for a second. It's okay. We move on. So you have to give value to what they're saying. And I find this in dealing with clients, friends, that we believe that when we give value to what somebody is saying, that we then have to devalue what we believe. We believe that when we give value to what somebody is saying, we then believe that we have to devalue what we believe, which is not the truth. Two truths can exist at the same time. Now, my dear friend, college roommate, friend, he believes Jay-Z is the best rapper. He's probably gonna get upset. He believes Jay-Z is the best rapper. I don't think so, I don't think he's the best rapper. I think Nas is the best rapper, okay? I think Nas is the best rapper. And I will plead my case and I will say this to the end. I think he's the best rapper because I believe he took more risks with his content. I believe Jay-Z found a formula that worked for him. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Jay's dope, right? I think Jay found a formula that works for him, but I think Nas made records like Daughters, records that were just true to him, true to his experience, and he wasn't necessarily thinking this is gonna be a hit record. He was like, I just wanna put this out because it's valuable to me. I think I give credit to that, right? So now, if we're making this a fun one, right? You apply these same concepts when you're having an intense conflict. But when he's talking, or my other friend who thinks Pac is the best rapper, my homie Dre, he think Pac the best rapper, and he gives value to content as well, but also the level of passion, the level of cultural impact. So he's going to say Pac is the best rapper. So in order for me to truly respond back with what I believe, I have to give value to their criteria. So when one friend says Jay's the best rapper because X, Y, Z, I have to say, you know what? That makes sense. And I give value to that and say, okay, and this gets to the next part. When I give value to that, now I can answer him in a much more applicable way. Now I can say, okay, I understand why you give value to that, and it makes sense. At the same time, this is what I believe, right? So we're going through those things again, then we're going to go quickly into internal communication. In order to have very healthy, and if you're not following this criteria with a close friend or family, I'm not saying you're wrong, but you're probably missing each other. Clear your head out, let them get everything out, practice the active listening. After you practice the active listening, confirm with them, that you've heard them. Once you've confirmed with them that you've heard them, you have to give value to what they're saying. It must make sense to you. Because if not, you're just going to completely just go to the contrary. So once we've understood that we've given value and it makes sense, now you can respond. And sometimes if you go through those steps, there's no response to be had. It's like, oh, wow, that actually makes sense. I changed my mind. I think in addition to giving value to what they're saying, we also have to have the willingness to change our mind. The willingness to change our mind. If you think about it, have you watched this? Like, I stopped watching the news so long ago because I watched Democrat, Republican, and the minute they enter, both of them, no matter what the other person said, has decided they're not going to change their mind. Well, then what's the point of the conversation? If you have it in your mind, when you talk to somebody that you're not going to change your mind, there is no point in having the conversation. You're already where you are. Now, internal conversation. When we're having those conversations with our body, I think the giving value part is insanely important. We have what we set out as far as our plan. Our plan could be, I intend to do these workouts. I intend to get this meal prep service. I intend to do these stretches, whatever that may be. Then at some point, our body says, no, I don't feel like it. Or the body says, I want to push harder. At that moment, we have to empty out everything that we know about our body in the experience. Pardon me, not to empty out. In that moment, we have to honor everything we know about our body in that experience, honor everything we know, but empty out every past experience because this time could be different, right? So now for me, I like to run 3 days a week. Let's say on that third day, I always push and it always turns out well. But this particular time, I want to push, but it may not be conducive and it could risk injury. I have to take my time to really sit there and communicate with my body and take collectively all the cumulative information I've had, but then empty out every past decision, right? As far as, okay, just because I pushed the last 3 times, I need to push today. No. We have to sit there and really honor how we're feeling in that moment and just take cumulative information as far as how our week is going, how we feel, do we really have the energy? In addition to internal listening, we have to really dig when it comes to how we feel. To me, this is the most important one. When we feel upset, we feel bothered, we feel tired, it's not enough just to have that feeling. We have to explore why we feel that. That takes time, that takes energy. Sometimes it happens to me. I'll get up one day, I'm like, shit, I feel off. Then I gotta say, okay, why do you feel off? When was the last time you felt okay, right? Why do I feel off? When was the last time I felt okay? You know what? It was about 2 days ago, and then somebody said something that bothered me that I never really addressed. Okay, then I didn't do my work. So I just found the root of it as to why I feel off, and all the events and the chain effect that it had after that. And now I look and I say, oh, that's why I'm off. Because after I had that instant where something bothered me, then I missed a workout, then I ate this, now that's a whole collection of things that has happened that led me to feeling off in that moment. But if I don't ask why, then ask why again, then ask why again, then ask why again, I'll never be able to have that internal conversation, which I think we need to have very, very often. The only thing permanent is impermanence. So when we find a collection of exercise and nutrition and ways to approach conversation, and we're in this healthy space, we are going to change as we get older, as we learn more information, as our external circumstances change. We could get a new job, a new boyfriend, new girlfriend. We can get a new section of friends. All these things can change within our environment that could lead us to being a little bit different, especially if we start off with the exercise and nutrition routine when we're in high school. By the time we're 21, that's going to change. By the time we're 30, that's going to change. But all that is going to change. And that's going to take constant checking in and listening and listening and listening to the body. And you're always going to have to give value to what the body, you have to honor it. And I don't like using the word positive and negative, but in this particular case, I think it's important, is every negative behavior has a positive intention. Every negative behavior has a positive intention. So let's say I live by myself and every Thursday and Friday night I go to the bar and I'm just getting drunk and then when I get up for work on Monday, I don't feel my best, I'm bloated, I'm underperforming, and I tell one of my friends, you know what, man, I can't get over drinking all week and then going to work. And then somebody's like, well, you need to fix that. Stop. Internally, you need to have the conversation. This makes sense. I'm doing this because there's something else that I'm missing. Versus the behavior is just negative. No, it has a positive intention. It may be loneliness, you're trying to achieve connection. It may be escapism, right? And let's not say even that's a negative word. Let's just say you're just trying to get away from your reality. So you may need some other activities that are more conducive to your health, right? A lot of times it's just this desire for something else. And when your body's having that desire and the manifestation of that desire turns into a quote unquote negative behavior, we can't just stop at, oh, you're doing something negative, stop. Like, give yourself way more credit than that. You have to give yourself way more credit. If I could just stop, I probably would. You get what I'm saying? Those internal conversations always have to be surrounded with curiosity versus conclusive judgment. Because when you've made a judgment on something, it stops. It just stops, right? Sometimes there'll be certain times where I'll do something as far as just decision making. And sometimes I'll look back and I'm like, why you do that? That was stupid. And I'm like, oh, pause. There has to be a reason why you did that, Jyim. Why did, and as I dig it, I'm like, oh, in that particular situation, it made sense. Right? So when you're going and you're looking to change habits and you are looking to make adjustments to your lifestyle in order to feel better, in order to lower your stress, in order to achieve any even aesthetic goals or achieve any fitness goals, you have to look at your current habits with curiosity. That's how you listen to your body. Hey, mind, body, what are we doing? Why did we fall off here? Why do we make these decisions here? Oh, okay, that makes sense. Well, let's just find another way to do that. It's a lot of the same tools that you can go back and forth using those tools. And I think one of the biggest things, and if there's anything you take from this conversation, is whether you're listening to your body or you're listening to friends or you're listening to family, you're listening to coworkers, really pause for that second. Listen, confirm that your body understands you. Confirm with that person that you understand them, and then give value to whatever is being said or communicated. You can have two truths. Listen, don't be like the rest of these people here with like politicians. Oh, they can only be Democrat or only be Republican. And sorry to anybody who follows a particular party. It's I disagree with it. That only one truth can exist. Okay? So you give value to what somebody says, you give value to what they're communicating, especially if they're a friend or family member. And then if at the end of that, and you have to have a willingness to change your mind, if after that you still don't feel like you should change your mind, then you communicate your truth and hope they practice the same thing in return.